There's lots of assembly language compilers out there where you can take source code as a text file and input it and have it compiled by the computer into something that the Commander X16 understands. CC65, for instance, CA65. The Commander X16, the Metal Assembly Language Editor is very different. It's not meant for source code as text file. It's meant for compiled code as source. Here's what I mean. I'm going to load the editor, but instead of running it right away, I'm just going to tell BASIC that the area from 0801 and up is now free again, and I'm going to load a different program. This program wasn't written by me. It was written for a completely different computer. I don't have the source code. It was written for a 6502 based computer rather, the Commodore 64. But I didn't write it. David Murray, the 8-bit guy, wrote it. You can see it's just a call to 2061, which is hex 080D. Now I'm not going to run this either. Instead, I'm going to call 1024. That loads the editor. And now if we go to, let's go to BASIC. And we'll hit F5. You can see the whole BASIC program listed right here. It ends in 000. Here's 2061 in hex is 080D. This is the start of our program. So I'm going to hit F1. I'm going to label this start. Now, this is the code. We don't know yet what's going to have to change in order to make PETDRAW work for the Commander X16. So I'm just going to start looking through these subroutines. So let's go to 136F. And if we dig up the Commodore 64 user's manual, we can see that what's happening on this screen, the entire subroutine's on one screen. That's very nice. But what's happening here is he's tricking the motherboard into letting the CPU see the character ROM, which is normally only visible to the VIC chip. And he's copying the character ROM from ROM down to RAM. And of course C000 to C7FF is not a RAM location on the Commander X16, and the ROM is, the character set is located on Vera, so this is all going to have to change, but at least we know what's happening in this subroutine. So we'll call this one CCHR and we'll set a comment, copy character set. And we'll go back. Now we can see the implied label there. And we can just keep going. We can see 2 zeros stored in 13D0, 01 in 13D1, and another subroutine called. Let's go to that subroutine, 1405. And we can see that the 20 that was stored at 13D0 is now being plastered all across the screen. He's basically filling the screen full of spaces because the screen memory is located on the Commodore 64 in that 0400, well, 1000 contiguous bytes there starting in 0400. We're using that for subroutines. Obviously, this is going to have to all change. He's also taking that 1 that was stored in 13D1 and plastering it all over color memory, so it's basically white spaces all across the screen. And it's a blank screen, but at least we know now what this subroutine does, and we can set a label for this one. And we'll comment that. And we'll go back. And we can say we know that this is calling fill, but it's using white and spaces. So we'll set a comment here, blank screen. And the more labels and comments we enter into here, and the more we turn implied labels into explicit label addresses like this, JSRA CC HR. You note I didn't change any of the code. All I did was change the metadata. Again, we'll do this here. We'll just change this from an implied label into an explicit label reference. We keep doing that all the way through the program, and we can understand the entire program because we're basically turning it into source code just by applying metadata. Now if we go to 3.5a1, I believe this is just after the end of his code. Yeah, that looks like pretty close. So we'll just go a little past that and we'll type FEND. And if we go back, now we can save. X16 draw. Okay, so now if I quit, and in fact if I reset, if I load X16 draw, 1, and instead of running it, type sys1024, the editor comes back up and we've got our program with the metadata, the starts of the metadata anyway, and we can continue going through this program until we've got the whole thing figured out. And we'll look at all the subroutines that we need to change because of the differences in memory and video between the Commodore 64 and the Commander X16. And eventually we'll, after changing all of those subroutines that need to change, the rest of the program should still work, and therefore we'll be able to have a version of PETDRAW that's for the Commander X16. Now this is probably going to take me a little longer than a weekend because it's like an 11 kilobyte file, but by the time we're done, I should have another video out showing the differences between the Commander X16 and the Commodore 64, and we'll have a working version of PETDRAW. So I'm going to end this video here. Have fun playing with the Metal Editor.